Hello everyone, and welcome to American Cannabis. I'm your host, Ellis Smith, and today we're going to have an opportunity to ask our guest, John Morris, who is an energy efficiency expert, some questions about standards for growing cannabis more energy efficiently. For over 3 years, John has been focused on delivering education and outreach to utilities and energy service providers on the energy impacts of indoor cannabis production. In June of 2014, John designed the first indoor agriculture energy-efficient pilot program concept in the Northwest. In November of 2014, John designed, implemented, presented, and moderated the first utility conference focused solely on indoor cannabis production for utilities. This indoor agriculture utility roundtable had utilities from Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Colorado in attendance, as well as the Oregon and Washington state energy offices. John has published articles on energy and indoor ag, been interviewed by a variety of publications on energy and cannabis, and has presented at energy conferences in Seattle, San Jose, Boston, Toronto, San Francisco, Sacramento, Portland, Nevada, and the 127th annual NARUC conference in Austin, Texas. John was able to secure one of the first indoor grow facility tours for utilities in the U.S. This was a powerful opportunity to learn firsthand how growers prioritize energy use in their operations. John has delivered presentations to the California Public Utility Commission on energy usage for indoor grow facilities. John was invited to speak at the International Solar Conference on the potential for solar applications in indoor cannabis production. John is also the co-founder and board member of the Resource Innovation Institute. This nonprofit organization based in Oregon is member-driven with a market transformation focus to increase energy efficiency in the indoor ag space. Members will include utilities, growers, technology companies, and service companies. The Resource Innovation Institute will be supporting states throughout the U.S. who are interested in regional baseline study and then a certification standard for growing cannabis more energy efficiency. And you can look at this at www.resourceinnovationinstitute.org. In July of 2017, John and his team at DNR International were selected as subcontractors on an Energy Trust of Oregon residential cannabis grow lighting research project to identify potential energy savings for the residential sector. John, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Great. John, I'm going to kick off this webcast with several questions of my own before we turn it over to the audience questions submitted via our Q&A widget. So the first question is, can you tell us about the Resource Innovation Institute's initiative to support states throughout the U.S. in establishing a regional baseline study and a certification standard for growing cannabis more energy efficiently?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to share the work that the Resource Innovation Institute is doing. And in order to really get in-depth understanding of energy use in the cannabis sector, we really had to surround ourselves with growers. The RI was founded by folks that really have a deep energy background, as well as folks from the board of directors at the USGBC. So we have a strong energy context, but we needed to really develop strong relationships with growers to tell us kind of what's really happening on the ground. So RI set about developing a board of directors that includes growers from Oregon, as well as from Colorado and Washington. And we also have a technical advisory committee that is international. We have folks from Israel, Holland, and Canada that have technical expertise on the energy side, as well as understanding how energy and horticulture works. So I think that's really the foundation by which we're able to drive insight and develop a better understanding of what average might look like one day. But we're not there yet. I would say that collecting data is the holy grail of the cannabis industry right now. And for us to be able to aggregate data across a variety of building types, which include, commercial warehouses, greenhouses, as well as, properties that have mixed building types, and outdoor grows. We don't really make any judgment on how a grower decides to grow, whether it's outdoors or indoors or greenhouse. But we do believe that in any grow platform, there's ways to be more energy efficient or water efficient. So, for us right now, we're really trying to set the stage for data collection and working with growers on our board and TAC that are not afraid of being transparent with their energy use. And that's really kind of a small subset of growers nationally, I would say. But we really want to, get the message out that sharing your energy data is not a bad thing. It actually is a good thing, and the more data you share on your energy use, the better organizations like RII can serve to make that operation more energy efficient.
Great. Next question is, in an effort to gather additional energy data to guide the development of standards, RII recently released the Cannabis Power Score, a self-audit tool to help growers compare their energy performance relative to like producers. How critical of a tool will this be to compete in the market as competition increases and prices fall?
This is a mission-critical tool. It's a Cannabis Power Score. I'm really glad you asked about it. We formally launched it down in San Francisco about 3 weeks ago at a utility conference. It's a web-based tool that enables producers to compare their energy performance to like producers. So we'll try to really segregate it by type of production, by state and climate zone, by kWh, both BTU per gram and kWh BTU per square foot. And really what it does is it represents primary energy consuming activities in any given facility and serves as the basis of developing what we want to have as an energy standard. And it'll capture the aggregate data to inform stakeholders, help develop mini baselines for utilities and public agencies. And we're in open public comment right now. The whole key of RII, again, we're a nonprofit market transformation organization. It allows us to be super transparent and open with all of our processes. And so we have a Reddit site, and if you go find the Cannabis Power Score on the website there, it'll also lead you to a Reddit site where you can provide public comment on the tool itself. Maybe there's something you saw that we missed in it, something to kind of help make it better. We vetted this through our technical advisory committee. It took us a number of months to kind of get it right, and felt like with our work at the TAC, we were ready to kind of make it public and then, again, get it open to public comment to refine it even more. So once this tool is mainstreamed into the cannabis industry and the utilities see it as a great resource for them in their program design, we feel like we're going to get a really interesting snapshot of energy use and consumption nationally, and it'll allow us to really understand kind of what the opportunities are for efficiency.
This is exciting. We build a lot of grows here, and it's neat to see that we'll have a way to really truly measure some of the new technology coming into the space. This is great. Regarding the proliferation of energy use across all forms of cultivation, what cultivation techniques are the most energy efficient, you think?
I would have to say that the technology and the design of the greenhouses is phenomenal. There are manufacturers of greenhouses that are allowing people to grow year-round in Leadville, Colorado, for example, which I believe is at about 11,000 feet of elevation. And they're creating these structures that, with light depth and also additional LED lighting, these things can be fairly energy efficient, at least compared to an indoor warehouse. So I would say greenhouse technology is improving vastly, and that's really where I think a big opportunity is for really super efficient grows. The challenge is that there are some jurisdictions, particularly in California, that may limit the use of greenhouses. They don't want the act of growing to be publicly seen, so all the walls have to be covered up. So we really have to kind of look at kind of jurisdictionally what are the rules that are going to allow or empower certain types of grows to happen. I would also say that even greenhouses today I work with a contracting company, GrowTech, and they talk about greenhouses all the time. And some of them, even though you think they're super low energy use, they need three-phase power because they are putting additional lighting in there. So it's all relative, but I'd say greenhouses probably give us the best opportunity for efficiency today.
We're starting to see more and more be built, and that's kind of a trend we're seeing for sure.
Yep.
The next question is, LED grow lights are clearly use the least amount of energy, but there are still some uncertainties in the market related to these LEDs in the flowering stage. How do you plan to address these uncertainties?
That's a great question. I'd like to start the answer by saying that there are a number of amazing LED companies that are coming out and really focusing on light applications for plants. So that's number one. The challenge is today we don't have independent third-party verification organizations that can test performance in a standardized way. So oftentimes I hear from manufacturers that they've got this new LED light technology that is blowing the doors off of everything else, and I'm happy for them that they're pushing the boundaries as best they can, but it's really hard to say, okay, compared to what? I want to let everybody know that there is an organization called the Design Light Consortium, and they're out today actively working on developing a horticultural lighting specification. The Design Light Consortium also provides a qualified product list for utilities in other applications, residential, commercial, industrial, to qualify lights for incentives. And I see a time in the future where we have a qualified product list for growers to look at to say, yes, this grow light has been independently tested and certified and will deliver results. We're not there yet today, and right now growers have to strictly go off of the lighting manufacturer specification claims, which is sometimes challenging. So what we really need is, again, that independent third party that can say, yeah, this light delivers exactly what it says it will, and you can have much more confidence in that then.
And I think just in the current marketplace, you see there's a lot of LED manufacturers out there. I think there's only a few that really have catered towards the greenhouse side of the industry, which is on going back to your previous question about what do you feel the most efficiency is behind designing these facilities. And so I think there's got to be a trend from the manufacturers as well to understand that they've got to start to design these things based on these older design techniques that we've been using for indoor cultivation that apply to greenhouses. And so, once again, I think this is just the evolution of our industry and really showing our pathway moving forward that we're really putting the thought into this. So this is exciting.
Yeah, we're going to have to get a lot more granular in our understanding of lighting applications. And again, there are some great companies out there that are trying to get there. But I would also want to urge caution for folks, especially utilities on the call, that think that the LED is the silver bullet solution to energy efficiency for growers. And I would hazard a guess. I don't have a full number or any way to validate this, but I would guess there's maybe 1 to 2% of all growers nationally and internationally in Canada are probably using an LED right now. So we've got a long ways to go in terms of getting market penetration for growers that are going to adopt LEDs. And again, just switching out an LED means you have to look at your entire system now because you're taking heat out of the room. And so that could potentially increase your heating needs in that building. So again, I really advocate for a kind of a systems approach to energy efficiency in these buildings. Messing with the light means you're going to have to mess with the HVAC. So always try to encourage utilities to take a comprehensive look at efficiency, not just kind of a single measure approach, because the growers won't be happy with that. They need to kind of see how it all fits together within their system. And by incentivizing a light only, you're really running the risk of the grower not seeing results because everything else has been triggered in an incorrect way, and then those lights get pulled out. So you have a persistence issue there that would have to be addressed, and that's not going to be pretty.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. In our industry, we have some patterns of the way we operate, and they're kind of, I don't want to refer them to basement mentalities, but this is kind of the way this industry was created, and we're still using those mindsets. And I think as technology comes into the space, we really have to adjust and retool the way we look at how we grow these plants, because technology is changing. When you're growing in a 75-degree temperature and now you're going to an 85-degree temperature room with an LED light, it's a whole other aspect on your growth space and how you're going to operate it. And so I think the industry's got to adapt as technology changes, and we've got to grow with the space as we're evolving.
Yep, and the utilities have been working on lighting and HVAC for 30 years. They've been refining the technology. The manufacturers have been increasing efficiency, and so it's really great that the utilities have a really strong understanding of HVAC and lighting. They just don't have a historical knowledge of how plants work in buildings, right? And so we have to, again, customize a set of solutions relative to HVAC and lighting for cannabis growers. And I would urge utilities, again, not to shoehorn this new customer class into an existing program. This is not a commercial lighting program, folks. This is a new customer class that has putting a lot of plants in a very small space. And that means that there's a lot of things and a lot of dynamics at play, and we really need to be cognizant of all of that. Otherwise, we won't create the right solution for our growers.
Agreed. What are the challenges with HVAC economizers and codes?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm really glad you brought it up, and it's something that every state that has both medical and legal grows is going to have to really kind of wrestle with. And the challenge is that the economizers that are required by code are designed for the human use occupants of buildings, right? And so code requires that there's a certain amount of air changes per hour in a building because there's humans in it. But in fact, a lot of growers don't really want to see these air changes at all. They're trying to pump these rooms full of CO2, which the plants needs to grow. And I spent, again, some time with my friends at GrowTech, Ian and Anya, and again, they say that they're working on this very diligently in the state of Oregon. We know Washington got a variance for it, but, this is an added cost on the grower to put these economizers into a building that they're essentially going to lock as soon as the code official goes in and kind of does an eye test to make sure they're there, but they'll never be used. And so while we think that it's going to be great for an efficiency standpoint, it's really an undue burden on a grower to kind of put that in there for air change requirements when the plants don't need it. And it's really designed for an industrial process, not a human use space. So, again, RII really would like to have the resources to kind of take this on nationally and help code departments really tweak this thing so it works for growers using these spaces for plants, not people using the buildings for human use. So big challenge. Encourage any state that is on the cusp of recreational legalization, but as well as for medical, to really study this issue and figure out a way to kind of customize the approach with local code officials.
Yep. Okay, looking to the near future, do you see nanogrids as part of the solution for cannabis energy requirements?
Not in the near future, no. I think as markets mature and as growers are looking for properties that are probably further out on the grid edge of their serving utility, a nanogrid could make theoretical sense. And in California, I've come across different property developers that are out in the desert and where it'd be very hard for a utility to kind of get that three-phase out there. And if you're looking at, building a substation versus a nanogrid, I believe that there's ways to make that pencil. There are some organizations like Scale Energy and Green Energy Corp that are very focused on microgrid and nanogrid solutions for growers. And and I believe that we will get there eventually. But right now, my sense is that growers in their project development phase are, really trying to get that initial build-out done as quickly and cheaply as possible. And so they don't have the bandwidth, the resources to think about the value proposition of having that redundancy in place. There was a recent article on LinkedIn about a grower in the wine country that had the ability to have the kind of the microgrid and backup energy when everything else was really, the rest of the grid was really suffering. And so I think there are scenarios where it makes a lot of sense. But my impression is that most of these growers are really just trying to get these new facilities built as quickly and cheaply as possible.
Explain to me and the viewers what a nanogrid is exactly, and kind of a little more detail behind that, please.
Yeah, well, for me, if we look at a microgrid solution, it would typically be applied to a larger scale complex. So microgrids are typically looked at as applying to a college campus or applied to like a hospital campus where you have significant number of buildings that with a lot of roof space, but all geographically very close, right? So they're within, street blocks of each other. And the buildings have, added levels of capacity, both in the ability to generate power, whether primarily through solar, and then additionally to store the power with battery pack backup. So these microgrids, again, traditionally are built around this model of larger buildings, larger footprint. Nanogrids, I think the definition is a little bit loose, and probably a variety of folks listening today would have maybe a slightly own variation of the definition, but I think of it as kind of a smaller set of buildings in a smaller geographic location. So you're looking at maybe one block of buildings and maybe two or three that can, again, store and generate capacity power and use it when the grid goes down. So that would be my definition for nanogrid.
Perfect. Okay, great. Okay. I used to work with the U.S. Green Bill Council doing video documentation many years ago in a past life, and was exposed to a lot of industrial and commercial LEED projects, and used to document a lot of these. Do you see this transition in our industry starting to adopt a lot of these technologies and techniques from this industry into our space so that we can really look at smarter ways to build these facilities and once again reduce our impact?
It's a great vision, and we joked around at RII. One of our founders, like I said, Elizabeth Whalen, is a former board member of the USGBC, and we kind of joked around saying we wanted to create the LEED for Weed certification standard. Right now, we're really LEED has a kind of a comprehensive view on all elements of sustainability, and that's very valuable. For us, we really wanted to kind of be extremely focused on energy first and then water second. So we're taking a deep dive on two dimensions of larger sustainability approaches. We'll get there. We want to have this scenario where we develop the baseline, right? So we know what energy looks like average for a greenhouse, what it looks like average for a warehouse, what it looks like average for outdoor grow. And once we kind of know that, then we can say, okay, here's the best practice for you to get to your, gold, silver, platinum level of energy performance. And we want to create a recognition model so that consumers can say, okay, the cannabis that I've purchased is, X level energy efficient, X level water efficient. And we believe there's a market out there for that. But we got a lot of work to do to really kind of have a deeper understanding of what the energy issues really are. So we're taking a very methodical approach to that. But we do see LEED as a great example to follow. We'd like to have an envisioning of, net zero cannabis grows one day. And I think that market prices will dictate energy efficiency becoming more and more valuable. Colorado, price per pound of flower dropped in half in 2016. Energy prices stayed the same. So as more growers come online, I've heard they expect to produce 8 times the amount of cannabis that could actually be consumed in California, which again indicates that at some point, reducing your energy costs, which is about 30 to 40% of total operational costs, will give you a competitive advantage. And Resource Innovation Institute wants to be the front and center organization to help growers be long-term sustainable and long-term market competitive.
Okay. I have a question here from someone online asking, what does LEED stand for? If you want, you can tell them, or I can tell them. So either way.
If you work for them, why don't you go ahead and take that one?
It's basically leadership through energy and efficiency design. I believe that's what it stands for. Off the cuff, I haven't read that in probably 10 years or 5 years, but it's basically just leadership through energy and efficiency and design. And so that's basically what the acronym stands for. And it's a tool used in building to really rate. They've got a platinum, a gold, a silver, to really show how net zero you can basically create a space. And it also weighs into the materials you use, into the build out, the different technology you bring in from energy efficiencies behind your HVAC systems. But they also look at components of efficiencies behind your employees and the way they add in a lot more natural light. And really it's a full encompassing kind of concept behind the way they design these spaces for not just efficiency of the space, but also efficiency for your employees working there. And so ideally we want to see this trickle over into the cannabis sector, and this is a very strong core value of mine, as I was exposed to this many years ago, and have been exposed to this net zero concept, and really want to see how we can green up our grow facilities. And so kind of leading into that, what are the next steps that we can do, John? I'm a cannabis consultant by trade. I've designed and built over 1 million square foot of grow space to date. We're constantly trying to be innovative. What can myself, as well as the people on listening today, what can we do to start to take the next steps and be part of this growing change?
Yeah, it's great to hear, and I'm really, impressed with your background in terms of the facilities you've built and designed, and that's really, really great that you're taking up the energy efficiency conversation, and I really appreciate everything you're doing to kind of bring attention to it and awareness of it. Obviously, if I had to make a quick pitch, the Resource Innovation Institute is always looking for expertise to kind of round out all of our different elements and areas of work that we're focused on. I'm trying to build up the solar element right now, so that we have solar experts that can really help drive down the energy use even more. I'd reach out to your utility and say, hey, look, I'm building this facility. You guys help me figure out how I can make this more energy efficient. And that's the thing, is the growers and utilities had an interesting, if not odd, relationship over the last 30 years. In some cases, if growers weren't outright stealing power, it was certainly at best a don't ask, don't tell type of relationship. And so RII really wants to be that national platform to bring the utilities and the growers and the manufacturers together to really comprehensively address all of the opportunities for energy efficiency. But we can't do it in our silos, right? So, utilities can't just sit around and talk about it, in amongst themselves, and the growers can't talk about it in amongst themselves. We need to really think of each other as partners and really see the utilities as a way to lower that operational cost. And also, I would say, even before you get to efficiency, call your utility before you've even bought the property. More and more I hear about stories where growers buy a piece of land and they don't really do a full energy assessment of what capacity is out there. And unfortunately, the power is at a single phase, and 3-phase is 30 poles down. So they have this unforeseen, unbudgeted energy upgrade costs, and then they have to get in a line for whatever any other projects the utility has in place. So I would say look at the utility kind of as that immediate partner. Help them, let them help you define and identify the best properties for where you can maximize energy use. and then talk about efficiency as well. But hookups are a big issue, and I've talked to some utilities, they're a year and a half out from getting anything new online. And so understanding that where you select your property is so important, and not just from a kind of a price per square foot of that land or that warehouse, but what the energy capacity is critically important.
Great. I want to make one quick correction. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Sorry, I had the efficient design wrong. So Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. But I've got another question that's come in. How are state regulators exploring standards for cannabis grows around this mindset?
I would say that in my experience, the regulators are California is kind of the leading regulating agency right now. They're really being proactive in trying to address this issue up front. But I really have not seen any other state take any commissioners take a leadership role in trying to help work with utilities to kind of set the stage. Even in my own home state, Oregon, I don't believe anybody at the commission level has really thoroughly explored or looked at these issues. So, and I went down to NARUC and gave a talk at their national conference and said, hey, this is coming. You need to really address it and be ready. But they have been slow on the uptake on that. And so I would really encourage any regulators on the phone or on the webcast to kind of take some initiative and start trying to better understand the energy impacts that are going to be happening in your state, and not just for states that have recreational legalization. This is all relevant to states that have medical as well, if not more so. I have a theory that I have not been able to verify yet, but I think that medical grows on a watt per square foot basis could be more energy intensive than recreational because they're capped by the number of cards they can stack, so they're growing trees. And I believe on the slides there's a picture of a medical grow facility, and these guys literally they're not thinking about going to LEDs, they're thinking about going to 3,000 watts per plant. So the medical folks, if you think, oh, my state's just medical, I don't really have anything to do, no. Start today with your medical growers, because likely the medical state will then convert to rec, and you'll have such a huge leg up in terms of working with this community. And speaking of medical grows, the blind spot for the utilities really is medical grows that are growing in residential structures. And it's those buildings that are putting more stress on the transformers than the warehouses. So when you have a residential home that's got a basement grow and it's running that full amps at 24 hours a day, those are the ones that are blowing the transformers. And so I would really urge utilities to kind of look at what's happening in your residential buildings today, and there's going to be a lot of savings opportunities there.
Perfect. I got another question here. What should be the target watts a square foot goal of a cannabis farm?
That's a great question. I'm really glad it was asked, and I'm always very open and transparent when I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer to that question because I don't know what average is yet. But once we have an average, what we find is the kind of general trend for energy per square foot, then I can have a more informed recommendation on what it should be. And I think it's also important to say we could have ideals and goals of what it should be, but we should also be very clear on what's realistic. And I always tell utilities, that are looking at incentives for efficiency, when they start out, they're like, okay, well, if you're at 1,000 watt light and you convert to an LED, then I'll incentivize that. But you're asking a grower to go from A to Z in a watt perspective. And why not a step-down approach? Why not incentivize the grower to go to, 850 watts? or 600 watts, and take a step down approach. So again, I kind of shy away from any definitive where we should be statements yet because I don't know really where we are. But in any case, I would say let's not expect that the growers are going to go from A to Z on the continuum of efficiency. Let's help them kind of step down their approach over time. And I think that's a more realistic goal. But it's a great question.
Okay, I've got a long it's not a question, it says, just a comment. It says, John, in our experience, the growers looking for property do not understand their own capacity needs before purchasing, along with what equipment needed. Growers should ask for help determining needs, capacity needs. So any kind of comment around that?
Yeah, I work with these guys, GrowTech. They've been building facilities for 10 years, and they get requests from growers to kind of map out a plan for energy use. And the growers don't, and again, anecdotally, so I don't want to say this is true for all growers, but in our experience and what we're finding is that the growers are trying to build stuff as cheap as possible, and they're not really, they're making assumptions on what the property can do in terms of providing power, and they're not doing the due diligence in terms of how they're going to scale their energy over time, and they kind of want all of the energy available up front, and so the utility will go ahead and say, okay, this is the power you need, we'll build that. But that doesn't mean that the grower is going to go to 100% production overnight. And the utilities need to understand that just because you're providing them X amount of power capacity doesn't mean that that power capacity is going to be hit in 2 weeks, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And so I would encourage utilities to really understand what is the average ramp rate for a facility to go from 0 to 100, right? And while, again, that grower or that grow facility operator wants to know that they have kind of room to expand and the power will be there, the utility wants to know that energy is being used at full capacity. So there's a lot of kind of dynamic give and play between what the growers think they want and what they need. And then their contractors. Are the contractors kind of oversizing equipment to help them with future growth plans, or are they trying to make it as light and nimble as possible? There's so many different myriads of information and knowledge, and on both the utility side and the contractor side and the grower side, that a lot of work to be done. But again, trying to have a communication about what best practices look like and sharing information on data is the first step.
We have to change our old ways and habits, and that's what's exciting about the space.
Yes.
I've got a question here. What is the 2 most common ways for growers to make their grows more energy efficient?
The most common is going to be lighting, and again, it's a matter of does the grower trust the technology? As you mentioned in your kind of initial commentary there, LEDs for veg versus LEDs for flower stage. What works, what doesn't. So I would say the lighting is probably where people are going to go first for efficiency, and then again the HVAC is the secondary kind of opportunity for efficiency, but also want to look at the shell measures, right? And dehumidification really is kind of emerging as a really technically challenging issue. Desert Air is one of our RII members, and they actually do work with pools. So they do indoor pools dehumidification, and they're saying it's kind of a similar scenario with all these plants in a building as opposed to kind of keeping a room with an indoor pool dry. But getting the HVAC manufacturers and the growers to kind of start speaking the same language is kind of the first step. And we put together seminars and half-day conferences at RII to really do deep dives with experts on these topics. and we put on these events around the country. So really, again, just trying to do education and outreach as best we can to address some of these questions. But again, lighting and HVAC are the two big opportunities for efficiency, but they are super connected, right? So you play with one, and then eventually you're going to have to, tweak the other side as well.
Yep. All right, here's another question. How can growers deploy efficiency renewables to possibly circumvent power upgrade needs? Can a grower use CHP, for example, to reduce its energy demand to the extent they don't need phase 3 power?
They could. I mean, what I'm seeing instead, though, is folks buying diesel generators. And that's obviously not the best environmentally friendly option. But what happens is the growers need the upgrade, and they realize that the utility is going to take a while for them to kind of get the power out, and so they start buying generators. And so having the opportunity to kind of educate the growers on other options, including solar and combined heat and power, is a great first step, but it's not their first step. What I'm seeing instead is getting as many generators as they can, and they're going to run into jurisdictional issues there because there's a lot of areas that do not allow generators to be run consecutively 24 hours a day. So you're definitely taking a risk by using diesel generators to kind of fire up your facility. But the CHPs and the solar, again, are costs that I can guarantee they're not penciling into their budgets. Again, generally speaking, there's probably a lot that are, but in general, I'd say they're looking at, again, for that cheapest, lowest first cost.
Okay. Here's another question here. It seems like growers' buy-in is essential to expand adoption of cleaner energy technologies. How are stakeholders addressing grower outreach needs?
Can you repeat the first part of that question? I just want to make sure I got it right.
Yep, it seems like growers' buy-in is essential to expand adoption of cleaner energy technologies. How are stakeholders addressing grower outreach needs?
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it really is important for the growers to see the value in the technology and to trust that whatever technology is being proposed for energy efficiency is not going to negatively impact yield and not negatively impact product quality. So when we go out and talk to growers, we have to make sure that we're promoting a technology that makes their facility better and makes their product better. And so it has to be a kind of a proven technology. It has to be, I believe, independently certified and tested. If I was a grower today and a manufacturer said, hey, I've got this thing, you should use it, I'd be like, well, I want to check in with my colleagues and cohorts. Is anybody else using it? And so you have to have a robust network of growers to validate concepts, to validate technologies, to validate that what we think in the efficiency world works will work in the grow world. And right now, like I said earlier, those are very siloed worlds. And we need to kind of come together to have comprehensive conversations. And when we put on our conferences at RII, we're bringing in the regulators. We're bringing in legislators. We're bringing in technology companies and growers and contractors. If there's not, the most important organization I would say is the contractors that need to get trained. When I was doing Energy Star homes, we weren't trying to sell consumers on the value of an Energy Star home. We were selling builders and contractors the value of an Energy Star certification label. The grower is not really akin to the contractor. The grower is like the homeowner. They understand the plant extremely well. They understand, levels of detail of a plant that I will never know in my lifetime. But if they have a contractor that they trust that's going to build out a facility the right way, and make them market competitive because their prices are so low operationally, that's going to be the win. And so it's finding those contracting companies, those construction companies that know how to build buildings for plants and understand the efficiency proposition is what's going to sell the grower.
Agreed. Okay, here is another question, and it's more of an opinion, I guess you could say. You could probably add some facts to it, but is there a quality difference of cannabis between indoor product using artificial light versus plant grown naturally? And feel free to give your answer, and I'd like to answer as well on that.
You know, I'm really agnostic. I think either grow type can make a case for what they do and the value of it and the quality of it. I'm really not interested in kind of getting into those debates. There are people that really, really enjoy outdoor cannabis, and there are people that really, really enjoy cannabis that's produced indoors. I don't really think that question gets to the heart of the issue, which is that in any way that a grower decides to grow, there's opportunities for efficiency. And so I'd love to get your opinion. I'm kind of agnostic. I don't the stuff that's grown outdoors in Northern California is world class, right? And so why would I try to debate the quality of cannabis produced outdoors in Northern California versus in a lab in Denver? I just don't find myself. I don't think it's a relevant question, honestly.
Yep. Well, at the end of the day, this is a plant. Growing it indoors is what we've been forced to do. Let's say the market's going to shift and change, and as you look at sustainability behind your grow facilities and how we're producing the plant and what your cost of goods consist of. In 20, 30 years, I think there will be a small market for indoor cultivation, but I think it becomes a commodity and becomes an outdoor product as we look at the market shifting into oil and getting away from smoking flower. There's still a big market that does do flower, but we're seeing the shift and the trend is there. And in the day, they don't care if it's grown indoor or outdoor. If it's oil, there's no bag appeal, no sex appeal from the look at something like a flower. I mean, I think as you look at where the future of the industry is going, you have to understand what does your cost of goods consist of, and that power bill versus someone without a high power bill using a greenhouse or using full sun production. You're going to have a hard time matching that profit margin, let's say. And so as you look to build a sustainable business model, this is what it's all about looking into the future is how do you maintain something that can last for the next 20 or 30 years, because you're going to spend a lot of money on indoor cultivation. You're going to have to retrofit your technology 2, 3, 4 years because LED technology and lighting technology in generally are changing year after year like cell phone technology exponentially. And so just to understand kind of what the big picture is, we're seeing a shift in Colorado where now you're seeing flower pounds of outdoor being sold for $300 or $400 a pound versus, $12 to $15 for the indoor. And so this is putting a hurt on the market and what people are doing and driving price down, and we have to look in the mirror and understand what makes sense for the future. And so it is kind of an irrelevant question to the day. I'll try to bring some relevancy to it, let's say. And so to kind of bring all that back together, let's say. So I think just in the day, there are people who love red wine from Napa and people who love red wine from Argentina. And at the end of the day, it's potato. That's not the big picture. It's all about sustainability, cost of goods sold, and what's an efficient business model to really be a long-term player.
Yeah, no, I want to be clear that it's a question that comes up regularly. The person that asked it's perfectly within the realm of a good question. I just try to really get to the heart of where can we really drive efficiency. And like I said, water efficiency probably is the bigger play for outdoor. But even the outdoor grows, I've been talking to folks and they need 3-phase power because they're dry rooms. They're drying a lot of cannabis that's been harvested. So, to think that the one thing I would say is that, people would like to make the case or the point that outdoor grows are carbon-free or, zero energy. But that's really hard to really nail down and define, because there is energy use that is being required to get that product finally finished. So we have to kind of look at the full cycle of not just growing but finishing, and actually extraction too is another great opportunity for efficiency we haven't even talked about. So indoor, residential, again, the basement grows where a lot of this stuff is happening, even in medical, in legalized medical. There's great opportunity there for savings. So
100%. Here's a question for me. Says Ellis, are any of your clients expressing interest or curiosity in energy and environmental issues as they relate to their operations? And to answer that, I've got two answers for that. One, yes, I've got a few customers and clients who that's a personal core values of them. They live in homes that are already LEED certified and come to me asking, how do we build a more efficiency into our grow facilities? So yes, I do get a few folks that do that. Not all of my clients, but call it 10 or 15%. Second way to answer that question is because of my background working with the U.S. Greenville Council, being exposed to that technology, I've done a lot of work with the HVAC companies, materials companies, and just overall understanding of looking at how do we build a smarter grow facility. And so through my projects to date, I'm on my now version 4.0 on my multi-tier growing system, as I've looked at every aspect of making this lean processes and putting in the most efficient HVAC systems. But now I'm looking at materials for my walls and the building envelope, and once again trying to push what we have traditionally been seeing in LEED buildings and applying it to cannabis. And 10, 15 years ago, you may have spent 25% more on the build-out to achieve in bringing some of this technology, but it is now becoming more cost-effective and is now becoming a reality to do this, and it may increase your overall build-out by maybe 7 to 10%. And when you look at the savings over time and the impact and the reduction you can make, it starts to make sense from a fiduciary responsibility of owning a business. And so this is where we start to look at this mindset of a triple bottom line. And it's not just about making money, it's also about thinking about the environment, but also the people involved in it. And so this is kind of what separates what I do from most of my competitors, is I'm trying to sell this concept of building more sustainable grows and really looking at how that impacts your bottom line and your cost of goods sold, because it can make an impact and make you be more sustainable in an industry that's getting competitive. And so a few of my customers ask for that. I still try to push that on them and show them the ability to implement it and how it can impact their bottom line.
I'd just add to that anecdotally. I was at the MJ Biz conference in D.C. this year, and I had a chance to visit with a woman who is a contractor. She builds these facilities in Denver. She had a booth there at MJ Biz, and I was like, oh, great. I get a chance to speak to someone who's actually building these things out in Colorado, the most mature kind of market, relative to recreational cannabis in the country. And the only thing I just asked her one question. I said, given again the price per pound of flower dropped in half in Colorado last year, are your grow customers starting to ask you for these more energy efficient facility designs? Are they asking for the LED fixtures? Are they asking for more efficient HVAC? And she just looked at me and said, not a single one. They all want 1,000 watt. They all want these facilities to be built as quickly and cheaply as possible. And it just really kind of reinforced in my own mind kind of how much work we have to do, that even in the most mature market where prices are dropping, which you would think would be a key market signal for increased efficiency, that we have to do some more outreach there. And we have to partner with our local utilities like at Excel. And they can really do a great job in terms of getting these folks to understand the value benefit, and it can be a trusted resource. But it was just a really telltale sign that in the most mature market, contractors are not being asked by growers for efficiency.
This doesn't make sense to me. I think at the end of the day, you need to look at what's going to impact your business, and when you look at your power consumption alone, you've got to look at alternatives and ways to, clean that up. So we hope to see this trend change over time, and people start to realize the importance behind this.
Yep.
Okay, I've got another question here. What are the biggest constraints for growers to embrace renewables like solar, wind, and those types of things?
I'd say the biggest constraint, at least when you think about a grower from a large kind of recreational grow with a large facility, like we have a guy out here in Hillsboro, Oregon. He owns a 160,000 square foot warehouse, and he's going to subdivide that warehouse by about 28 lots. So he'll have 28 growers in there. And his original vision was, how can I make this the most energy efficient property in North America for growing? And he was going to, hardwire LED fixtures into every grow lot, and going to use combined heat and power. And he was going to put a $2 million solar array on the top of his roof. The roof could handle it. He had plenty of roof space. It wasn't a question of that. But even with all that kind of efficiency built in, his utility bill was going to be coming in right around $1 million a month, Portland General Electric. I bring that up to say that solar and wind are all great options, but you have to think about it in terms of scale. And so does the facility have enough capacity on its site to really put a dent in that energy operational cost? Haven't seen it yet. If I was really serious about how do I make a play for solar in the cannabis space, it'd really be kind of like a more of a community grow solar model, right? So, you'd probably have to look at on-ground solar that these growers are all using and pulling from collectively to kind of make a realistic dent in the energy footprint of the operation. I think solar's got a better chance really on these residential grows. I think they can have more impact there and probably save the utility a lot of headaches with the risk of those blown transformers. So again, if I was a solar operator, I'd be focusing on medical states, and those are all organizations that are listed and registered with the state. Find them, figure out where they're growing, and figure out how solar can help.
Great. All right, we're running down to about our last 2 minutes or so. I've got one more question that I wanted to mention earlier, and I forgot. This goes back to the diesel generators. For these folks that are remote and may have a hard time or, have a hefty expense to run power lines to where they're operating, have you seen and what do you know about these propane generators that we can run natural gas into these things and reduce our cost down to anywhere from 6 to 8 kilowatts of cents per hour? How do you see these playing in as an alternative resource as well?
I think it's a great idea, and I think we talk a lot about electricity, but I also believe there are opportunities for natural gas utilities to be involved in the cannabis sector. Particularly, for the greenhouse growers that want to, grow year-round and will have heating needs. I've been working with Northwest Natural here in Oregon quite a bit on kind of designing ideas and concepts for a role for natural gas to help serve heating load for growers that are using, again, greenhouses year-round. But yeah, I think finding ways to tap into propane or natural gas versus diesel generators is always a smart move to do your due diligence on, and you might find that the local gas utility can get you out something pretty cheap and effectively that can meet your needs. So I think it's a great question and highly encourage folks to look at that as an option for sure.
Great, John. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here. We are down to our last minute here. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today for our second webcast. We had John Morris. He is with Resource Innovation Institute. Check out www.resourceinnovationinstitute.org. He's an energy efficiency expert. John, thanks for coming on today. I am Ellis Smith. We look forward to hearing you on our next webcast in December. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.